Has this ever happened to you? Your daddy buys you a 30 terabyte SSD for Christmas, and suddenly your data is corrupted. I hate that! Unfortunately, these SSD scams are plaguing the internet, so we need to talk about them. Sponsored by Linode, cloud computing from Akamai. Hey guys, how are you all doing? If you're new here, welcome. My name is Krazy Ken, and we need to revisit these SSD scams, especially this 30 terabyte model I found on Walmart's website for $39? But first, I need to quickly update you about the last SSD company I was investigating, London Comfy. Back in June, I released an episode about these alleged 8 terabyte solid-state drives from londoncomfy.com. Check out that episode if you haven't seen it yet. It's great. After making that episode, there were a few follow-up tests I wanted to try and a couple of other topics I wanted to elaborate on. And I made that promise to you all, so I want to stick to it. But it wasn't quite that easy because I accidentally broke the London Comfy drive, so I couldn't test it further. Yeah, everything was kind of glued together in there, and I was a little aggressive while trying to extract those guts, and long story short, it doesn't work anymore. So I went back to the website and I bought 2 more at the lowest capacity. And this was on June 22nd, 2022. 20 freaking days later, I finally get a shipping notification. But another month goes by and nothing happens. So I emailed them. London Comfy deeply apologized, and they gave me a discount code. Yeah, Anna, I'm sure you're very sorry, if that's your real name. Nothing happens for 6 more weeks, so now we're in September. So I emailed them again, and to this day, I still have not heard back. So I checked their website, and what a surprise! They vanished. So the odds of me getting another London Comfy product are slim to none. But I wanted to run some more tests, so I needed to look around for another drive that was similar but maybe still a bit unique and different. Thankfully, I found this insane SSD on a website called Rapango? I have no idea. The site claims a 30 terabyte capacity and read-write speeds of 1050 and 1000 megabytes per second respectively. Are those speeds even possible in reality? Absolutely. Thanks to an SSD's architecture, you can transfer data to and from them really fast, and they're very compact. But is that the case with this product? Let's keep looking. I noticed the price was $89.90, but thanks to many viewer submissions, I found the same product on Walmart for half the price. So that's where I bought it from. And it arrived no problem. It did take a couple weeks though. So before we open this thing up and look at it physically, there is one big red flag I'd like to discuss. The price. As of late 2022, an 8 terabyte M.2 SSD would cost at least $1,000. So a 30 terabyte product for $40 is way beyond plausible. Heck, even the previous scammers were charging $90 for 8 terabytes. So multiply that to 30 terabytes and $40 still seems insanely low. My advice is always check the prices of similar products on other websites, because if there's a big price gap between 2 products, that's a red flag. That usually means the cheaper product is a scam, or maybe it's just a tremendous pile of junk. If you can, avoid websites like Walmart and Amazon when you're doing this cross-checking. I'm not saying don't shop on those websites, but when you're doing your research, be careful with those websites because almost anybody can list stuff on there, and that's exactly what we're dealing with today. Now, just to cover my butt here, I need to say this is not a Walmart branded product. Walmart did not make this product, so cut them some slack. However, Walmart should do a better job at vetting these listings so people don't accidentally buy them. With that said, let's look at the product itself. The product's design is similar to Samsung's T5 and T7 SSDs. The scammers likely did this to trick people with a nearly identical product. When I first unboxed the fake SSD, I immediately felt how light it was compared to a real external SSD. And that tells me there's not much happening inside this thing, but we will crack it open soon and double check. The SSD has a blue status LED and a single USB-C port, and it comes with a USB-C to A cable. The box advertises USB 3.1 speeds, which I highly doubt, but we will test it anyway. And it has a sticker reading 30T, probably meaning 30 terabytes. On the back of the box are the system requirements, or parameters in this case. Oddly enough, it supports Android, Windows, and iOS, but not macOS. Well, that's weird. The London Comfy SSD worked on macOS. Don't know why this wouldn't, but we'll test that too. And the side says high speed, which I highly doubt. Easy carry. Yeah, that's probably the only true thing. No time like the present. Let's plug this in and see how it works. The first real test is the capacity. I'm using a program called H2TestW to assess the true capacity of this SSD. Due to the drive's slow speed and fake massive storage capacity, the first half of this process could take over 600 hours. Because you and me have a life, I'm not going to subject you to the whole frickin' test. So I'm going to stop the test early at about 300 gigabytes because that should be way more than what the true capacity of this thing is. The program wrote over 300 1 gigabyte test files to the SSD, and the verification process ran for several hours. And the final results were, out of 386 gigabytes scanned, only 116.3 gigabytes of data is usable. Let's see how that translates to a real-world situation. To further test the capacity, I erased the test files and transferred about 180 gigabytes of video files to the SSD. Simultaneously, Windows reported the transfer speed of the drive. It rarely exceeded 18 megabytes per second, which is nowhere near the true speed of a USB 3.1 Gen 1 SSD. 625 megabytes per second theoretically. And later in the transfer, the speed suddenly declined to about 13 megabytes per second. That was probably the point where the drive filled up, and now this cheap controller has to erase those old blocks of data while writing new blocks of data, which can slow down an SSD's performance. Better controllers handle that better, but cheaper controllers can really slow down a drive. So that's maybe what happened. I'm open to your theories though. Anyway, after the transfer, all of the files showed up on the drive, but only 23 of the 48 files actually opened up properly. The rest were corrupted, and I'll explain why soon. So with these two tests, I can reasonably conclude the storage inside this drive is not 30 terabytes, but in fact 128 gigabytes. And for the record, I did confirm the claim on the box. For some reason, this drive does not work in macOS. I tried multiple methods in Disk Utility to format the drive, and all failed. However, I used the System Information app to get some additional info. The product name identifies as Disk 3.1, probably referring to the advertised USB 3.1 speed. And the vendor ID is Integrated Technology Express Incorporated, with a product ID of 1234. And I love this part. The theoretical speed of the drive is actually 480 megabits per second, which is USB 2 speed, not even close to USB 3.1 Gen 1 speed, which is 5 gigabits per second. So before we crack this thing open and see what's really on the inside, let's talk about how this thing actually tricks the computer. The flash storage chips on an SSD's board need a brain to operate properly and communicate with the rest of the computer. This brain is a controller, which is generally a separate SoC or system on a chip. The controller uses a firmware so it can operate. Firmware is a type of software that's programmed directly into hardware. However, this firmware can be programmed in a misleading way, so the controller tells the OS the incorrect capacity. And earlier, I transferred 180 gigabytes of files onto what's actually a 128 gigabyte drive. So 180 can't fit into 128. What happened to all of that extra data? When the first 128 gigabytes of data are successfully transferred to the drive, the data is written to the storage medium, and the file system's file allocation table is updated with the locations of this data. Much like how we read an index to find an excerpt in a book, the computer reads the file system's file allocation table to find corresponding data on that drive. Now, without truly knowing the secret sauce of the programming inside of this controller chip, I can't say with 100% certainty what happens next, but this is likely the scenario. When you fill up a normal drive, you get a warning saying there's no more space. But that's not the case with this drive, because again, it's lying to the computer. When the scammy controller chip overfills the drive, the old bytes are overwritten with new bytes, erasing the previous data and making room for new data. But the old entries in the file allocation table are untouched, so the computer and the user think the files are there. But when the user opens those files, they will get a data corruption error because the actual required data no longer exists after the overwrite. So that's how this scam product is tricking the computer and ultimately the user. And while we're here, it's a good time to remind everyone to back up your data. Remember, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So now, let's cut this thing open and see what's inside. There's no screws on this thing like there were with the London Comfy drives, so we're gonna have to bust out the big guns. Oh yeah, Krazy Karl is coming back. We'll start with this handy dandy RotoZip, and oh what the heck are you made of? You broke Krazy Karl's favorite tool.
And you will pay for this.
Okay, so instead, Carl cut around the plastic edge with a razor blade, and a few minutes later, et voila, the plastic tray slid out. Inside the tray is a single PCB with the USB-C port, the status LED, some capacitors, the storage controller, and a single micro SD card and reader. Typically, SSDs have chips, usually NAND chips, soldered to the board, but this thing just uses a micro SD card, probably to keep the cost down. The controller is a ChipsBank CBM2199S. When looking this up on Device Hunt, the vendor and device details match exactly what we found in the macOS system report. And it looks like there's an open space on the board, so we can install Team Fortress 2. But it looks like there is space to solder another micro SD card reader. We saw this in the London Comfy episode. So now that we have successfully extracted the card, let's plug it into some conversion technology and plug it into a computer, and we'll see how fast it is when it's not connected to all of this BS. I plugged the card into my Mac while booted into Windows. The system said we need to format the disk to use it. And I don't want to do that yet because that will erase the card and that will screw up some tests I want to try. So for now, I hit cancel, and I got an error saying the volume does not contain a recognized file system. I tried the same thing in macOS and got an error saying the disk you attached was not readable by the computer. For fun, I checked the card and disk utility, and it confirms my theory that this is in fact a 128GB micro SD card, not 30 terabytes. I wanted to see if I could recover those video files I transferred earlier. So I installed ProSoft's data rescue application and deep scanned the card. And the scan found 29 files. So let's recover them and see if they work. Look at that, it worked! Data Rescue successfully recovered 29 movie files. The file names were wiped out, but other metadata was still intact. So with that test complete, it's now safe to format this card, and we'll see how fast it is. Back in Windows, I clicked the format button and boom, it worked immediately. To test the speed, I installed Crystal Disk Mark, complete with otaku themes. And the write speed clocked in at 78 megabytes per second, with an 87 megabyte per second read. In addition, I transferred several of those video files again, and the speed was about 60 megabytes per second. Man, this is just sad. The card by itself, directly plugged into a computer, performs over 3 times faster than when it's inside of this BS enclosure. So, Walmart, I think you need to take this off your website. But I know a company that actually gives you the real storage and speed that you order. Linode. If you have an application or website that you need to scale and deploy, Linode has the infrastructure and the 24/7 support you need. Linode offers out-of-box apps for game servers like TF2, CSGO, and even Minecraft. You can run your own virtual private network with OpenVPN, build an online application with Joomla's content management system, or build a video streaming site with a multitude of app choices. There's so much you can do with Linode's affordable Linux virtual machines. And to boot, they offer award-winning 24/7 technical support. To put it simply, if it runs on Linux, it runs on Linode. Visit linode.com/computerclan and click one of the sign-up buttons, and we'll give you a 60-day $100 credit just for watching this episode. And when you do that, you're also supporting the Computer Clan, so thank you very much. So be wary of these fake SSDs. And be wary of those fake flash drives too, don't forget about those. And man, I thought fake flash drives were bad enough. What's next? Fake flashlights? Oh, you gotta be kidding me! Ken, did you finish your homework yet? No, Mom, a cheap SSD ate my homework.